So, VK on the beat, check. I'm in Toronto, where you wanna get a city love. I'm from Toronto, where you wanna get a city love. I'm in Toronto, like we wanna get a city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1621 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones from Fusion Corp. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, making his Toronto Mic'd debut, is Eric Schenkman. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
What a pleasure. I want to thank right off the top Blair Packham. How do you know Blair Packham?
I think we might have gone to the same school. Or if we didn't, I know him from all the people that I went to high school with.
And this is Jarvis Collegiate.
Yeah, you got that right. Yeah.
Okay, I did my homework here today. True or false? Did Fergus Hambleton also go to Jarvis Collegiate with you?
No, that's false. He's older than me. However, his youngest brother and I were very good friends.
Okay, so same high school, obviously different eras.
Exactly,
He's got a number of years on you, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, maybe this gentleman also much older than you, but did Mark Jordan go to this high school as well?
He may have. It's possible. He's also older than me. Yeah.
Okay.
I sound old, but...
No. You know what? I got a list of these greats that have attended Jarvis Collegiate. Like these great musicians. Like, was that a hot spot for musicians, Jarvis Collegiate?
Well, yeah, it kind of was when I was there. I mean, it's right downtown, which makes it, kind of cool. And it's a huge school. And there's a lot of kids there. And so when I went to high school, I guess it was the late 70s, and everybody dropped out. So most of the people that I went to high school with didn't finish high school, and a lot of us got into bands.
I was going to say, the sign of a great school is when most of the students don't finish.
Yeah, it's like you leave and you figure out something to do with your life. And in all fairness, school was incredibly boring, and there wasn't a lot of great teachers. I'm not athletic, so I don't even know. I think they had a team, but I know they were called Bulldogs. But there was a lot of really good musicians kicking around. And it was inspiring in that direction. And also being downtown, back then we didn't have, as you know, we didn't have photo ID. I mean, screw the phone. It's like we didn't even have photo ID, so you could just borrow somebody's paper driver's license and get into a bar. So, we all just really we started, a rock and roll band or got in one, and, went and played in clubs, literally.
Wild. I have another name I'm going to throw at you because, again, I got this info from Blair, and the reason I shouted out Blair Packham is because I had this epiphany one day that I should have Eric Schenkman from Spin Doctors on Toronto Mic'd. We're going to get to this in a minute, but a member of Spin Doctors is a Toronto guy. I think a lot of people will be mind blown to know that this, there's a guy in the Spin Doctors who lives here in Toronto. We're going to get to that. But I knew Blair knew you, and I said, Blair, I need contact info for Eric. And he delivered, man. So I just want to tell Blair, way to go, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Blair. I love Blair. Blair's great. He was in a band called The Jitters back then, and we have mutual friends, so I still know Blair. And thank you, Blair.
He's the last of the Red Hot Fools, is what
Absolutely.
You're telling me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you.
Here's another mind blow. Okay, I can't get off this, but there's another FOTM. FOTM means friend of Toronto Mic'd. Christopher Ward went to Jarvis Collegiate.
He did, and that would be a guy that I don't know. However, Kurt Schefter went to Jarvis, and Kurt and I were very close, and we actually both came from the States originally, and we arrived here at extremely young ages. And I met him, actually his brother and I, his older brother, he's about a year younger than me, and his older brother, his name is Eric Schefter, and my name is Eric Schenkman.
Right.
And actually it's SCHEF and SCHEN, and we were in the same kindergarten class. And so I met him like pretty much instantly when we got here.
Like a roll call, you were next to each other.
He was Eric 1 and I was Eric 2. And then I met Kurt like right at that same time. So I've known Kurt like, all my Toronto life.
Well, now that you've mentioned Kurt, I need to shout out the Raving Mojos.
Absolutely, dude. I'm very familiar with the Raving Mojos. I know Blair. I know that Ken Fox was the original bass player. I knew him. I lived in New York for a while, and for a long time actually. And I know Ken from when he moved there. I know the original drummer Max. I know the next drummer Miles. I've seen the Mojos. I saw their first gig with Kurt at the Masonic Temple. And then those guys used to play at the Turning Point. My band used to play at the Turning Point. So I really go way back with those guys.
Well, I just had Blair, not Packham. Although apparently Packham might have played with the Raving Mojos for possibly.
No, I don't think he played with them, but I think we were all on a bill somehow together,
Okay.
because.
And when you say what band are you in at this time?
I was in a group. Actually, the Jarvis group that I was in was called The Other Side, and we were we kind of did we did some original stuff, but mostly back then, most of the groups were sort of coverish, and so we were. Sure. It was funny, man. We did I was into other things, but these guys were kind of bluesy and Allman Brothersy and Grateful Deady and stuff like that.
Jam bands.
Sort of jam bands.
Sort of like the Spin Doctors.
Way before jam bands. Yeah, so so my very, very good friends from then, we used to just skip school and go up to Graham Clark's place and play in the basement and smoke weed.
All right, so I'm going to assign you a little task here, but when you get an hour of free time, you can listen to Blair Richard Martin on Toronto Mic'd.
I'm doing
pretty
it.
Fresh.
I love Blair. Blair's brilliant.
And I don't think he's done, this is me tooting my own horn, but if you're looking for a long form conversation with Blair, keep looking, man, because this is one stop shopping. You're going to end up on Toronto Mic'd.
Yeah.
That's where you go. Okay, so Raving Mojos. And the funny thing about Raving Mojos is I never knew Raving Mojos because I missed them when they were playing live. And it's not like you can access studio productions of Raving Mojos music or whatever. So literally I'm on the show, and Steve Kane, former president at Warner Brothers Canada there, Steve Kane talks about his favorite band of all time is the Raving Mojos.
Mm-hmm.
And I take a note, literally take a note, why do I not know this local band that is this guy's favorite band
and
of all
legendary,
time?
really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you start to look for history, and there's a little bit here and there on the web, but
you can find a little bit.
You can find a little bit here and there, and you start to educate, but you're like, is this guy around? Blair Richard Martin? I need to talk to this guy.
And then you find out that he's a brilliant artist now. He paints and he's incredible. But at the time, I can tell you, the Mojos were our kind of, they were like downtown Toronto's Teenage Head. They were like our Ramones, they really were. They were great.
There's my Teenage Head drumsticks.
There you go.
Just in case you want to, grab them. Gene Champagne gave these to me.
Amazing.
There you go. Hey, man, how the heck okay, I got questions, 101 questions, but this might help get us there, which is you talked about you could get into bars underage because there's no photo ID.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know a guy in the early 80s, he was 15 years old, and he was playing in bars with the Spoons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this guy's name is Rob Pruce. He was the keyboardist in Spoons in the early 80s, but he was only 15. I think he had a note that let him get into these bars or something. I don't know how it worked back then.
You didn't even really need a note. You just needed to fool the guy at the door.
Right.
Nobody really cared.
And if you're with the band, the guy at the door didn't care.
Not at all. They really didn't care at all. Some bars might have. I had my friend's older brother's ID, and I was about 8 inches shorter than him. And we'd just go and get in together. The guy would look at the.
Well, he must have been a giant. You're a pretty tall guy.
No, I grew kind of late. I was pretty short until I was about 16.
Who is this giant you're talking? The friendly giant. Okay. So Rob Pruce wrote in and he said, I knew Eric's dad, Peter Schenkman.
There you go.
He was contractor for musicians at the Royal Alex, and was also a world-class cellist. Cellist?
Yeah,
Cellist. Well, you know what? That's how fucking uncultured I am, man.
It's all right.
But he was with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra.
Cell phone. So
What?
we
Did
don't
I say
call
cellist?
Yeah, we don't call it a cell phone. So it's all right.
Can you? I want your permission to fix that in post. I don't
Yes,
want
you
the
can- you
listenership to know I said cellist.
You got it.
That's embarrassing. Okay, cellist with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra.
Mhm.
Super cool guy who sadly passed away in 2006.
Yes, he did.
So I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, thanks.
But so your dad kind of, is that a gateway into the world of music for you at all? That your dad's
yeah,
kind
sure
of
it is. I mean, my old man was he was a super good. He was really, really good. He was really a virtuoso. He and his father was a conductor. My grandfather was a conductor. My grandmother was my grandfather's concert master. I just really briefly. My grandpa was. I don't want to go that far back, but I can tell you that he was a conductor. He worked in Richmond and Norfolk, Virginia, and he conducted their symphonies, and he started their youth orchestras. And my grandmother and he toured in Asia for a minute, and and so then my father was the oldest kid. My dad, it was just, he hated his dad. His dad was kind of a shitty dad. He was a good guy. I liked him, but love skips a generation. And my dad had a terrible time with his father. He's the oldest of 5, and he left home at about 15 or 16, and ended up, I don't know how he did this, but he learned how to play the cello in about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. And it's a really hard instrument. And he ended up at a school called Curtis in Philadelphia, which is world class. And by the time he was about 19, he got through the Army. I just said this on Facebook. Somebody was talking about this. I think it was Stan Mizek, my bass playing friend that I was telling you about. He was asking, who's the most famous person you ever opened for? And I just thought, well, I could go and list some stuff, which I didn't really feel like doing. And then I thought of Peter, my dad, and I was like, well, he played in the White House for Khrushchev and JFK in a string quartet out of the Army band. And I thought that's about the coolest gig you could ever have.
Wow.
So, yeah, and then he also was a soloist in the Casals Festival in Puerto Rico in 67, 68, and I was just like 3 and 4 at that time. And that's a heavy, heavy thing for those of you that don't know. Pablo Casals was one of the great cellists of all time, and if you're keyed to go to his festival and be a soloist at a young age, that really says something. So after that, I guess he met my mom.
Yada yada yada.
Yeah, and eventually, a couple cities later, I was already on the planet, and we ended up in Toronto. Seiji Ozawa was the conductor and TSO at the time, a brilliant conductor, and the TSO at that time was like fucking fabulous. Can I say that on the mic?
You can say fucking fabulous.
It was a fucking fabulous.
I can't even say cellist, but you can say that.
That's PH, by the way. Fucking fabulous. He was a fabulous conductor, and he hired my old man, and he imported us. So I became a landed immigrant like on day one.
You're answering one of my big questions, because this is the mind blow when you say, hey, there's not just some Johnny come lately, but like a founding member of Spin Doctors lives in Toronto.
Yeah.
And then, but you're not born here, right? So you're an American.
Yeah.
But it sounds like basically your dad joins the TSO, and then next thing you know it, you're in Toronto, so you can go to Jarvis Collegiate. Fun fact for you, though, my third born's name is Jarvis.
Wow, cool.
There you go. Everything connects here. Okay, so you basically, if your dad's moving to Toronto to be in the TSO, you're going to end up in Toronto too. But you stuck around. Like you didn't, I got to get so much info out of here.
It's easy. It's easy to explain it.
Okay.
When you're imported to a big symphony like my old man was. My parents were almost divorced already, but I figured this out myself. He really needed to come with his family. At that time, it was sort of a thing. So he arrived with both of us, my mother and I was just about, 4 years old. And so I really grew up here. I arrived in Toronto. The tallest building was like either the Royal York or the TD Center, and I grew up in the city, and we've always lived downtown. My mom, who was an awesome lady. She passed about 3 years ago. And she decided, I'm done moving around. This place is pretty cool, and I'm sticking. And my father stayed here too. So, there you go. That's the short of it.
Okay, so now you're in Toronto. You're loving music. You're going to Jarvis Collegiate and all this. By the way, fun little fact that but just for the listenership. So we talked about the Raven Mojos, but Kurt Schefter goes on to play with Atlanta Miles.
That's where I was going to go initially, because you said Christopher Ward. So
that's where we were. See,
full circle, right?
We're
So
back.
I don't know Christopher Ward, but I know Kurt Schefter, and Christopher Ward is the guy that wrote all those songs for Atlanta Miles, and Kurt is the guitar player that you'll hear. Black Velvet.
Black Velvet's the
That's
big
him.
one.
And he was a fantastic young guitar player, and it was a big inspiration for me too. There's a couple of other guys in the city too. There's a guy named Dave Hamilton. The three of us were kind of just, we sort of all figured we were just going to be guitar players, and it was mutual. Another fun fact, as you say,
I love fun facts.
There was a great music store on not Wellesley, but whatever it's called, Harvard and Bathurst, called Ring Music, and it was owned by Mike McLuhan, who was Marshall McLuhan's son, and all of the cool, the Tony Duggan Smith and this guy Tony DiMardo and guy I used to study with, Jeff Peacock, they all worked out of Ring Music, and so we would just skip off and go to Ring Music and, play guitars. I think Kurt ended up working there. We all ended up studying with somebody, taking lessons with some older guy there. And so that was, it was pretty cool. And so Kurt ended up being, he ended up being the guitar player in Atlanta Miles. And I just about the same time, a little bit earlier than that, I moved to New York and to the city. Yeah, my mother grew up in the city. I'm actually like a fourth generation New Yorker, really, and that's a whole other story.
Well, your phone case tells me you love New York.
I know, there it is, right? But it's got a Presto card in it, so it's sort of like, that's my whole history right there, and you can tell I really am not into technology because it's like an iPhone 8.5. So, but yeah, so. So there you have it, So Kurt, and then Kurt was at the time. We get back to the Mojos. I mean, he got drafted by Blair. Blair was a little older, and Kurt was about, I don't know, 14 or 15. He was just one of these guys that just, his hands were just built for the guitar, and so I used to go to his place, and he'd be taking the guitar. We'd take the guitar apart. He'd take the guitar apart and put some other pickup in, this and that and the other thing. It was fun times back then. I mean, And as you know, there's no surveillance, and so it was just fun to you'd be doing whatever. Dogs were walking around the city without collars, and nobody was going to school. I mean, geez, you try to tell the kids of today this, and yeah. So, anyways, that's a shout out to Kurt for sure. He's a badass. So he's on that, but he was also part of this group, the Mojos, and Blair drafted him into the band. And I remember clearly when that happened. And I remember I went to the Masonic Temple. I think it was the first time I was ever there. That's the concert hall now. For those of you that don't know.
888 Young.
Yeah, and it was just fantastic. What a fantastic group. And so there was a club called the Turning Point.
Yeah.
On Bloor Street, and it was run by this crazy old couple, Joe and Ann, and everybody played there. I think we played a 5-night stint there. Actually, we had a pretty good core following from the school. And it was funny, back then everybody wanted to be the other guy. So Kurt and I I'd be like, man, that's the baddest ass band you're in. And he'd be like, yeah, but I wish I was doing what you're doing. And it was sort of like we had that kind of relationship. So it was mutually beneficial. And when I went to New York.
Why did you go to New York?
I went to New York to go to school because I couldn't finish school in Jarvis. And as I said before, nobody finished Jarvis except for the smart kids. And, and so, one thing led to another. My old man had gone to this weird boarding school in Vermont, and my mother was literally beside herself that I wasn't going to school. And I think it got to me, and really at the very, very, very last minute, I said, well, yeah, I'll do grade 12 because I'd already dropped out of grade 12. And, we had 13 grades at the time, so I wasn't going to do that. And she says, well, why don't you, we had the number of this school, the Putney School, and I had a cousin that went there in the 50s. My dad dropped out of it. That's what happened. He had dropped out of this school. And I thought, yeah, I'll go finish school at the school that my old man dropped out of. And they let me in because they needed an international student. They had a quota. And so it's a funny sort of thing, right? I'm actually from there, but I actually got in.
You were as an import.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I'm a can American, a true can American. So I finished there and came back here for a couple of years. I played in a country punk outfit called All the Dead Heroes, and we lived in the coolest ass warehouse. We lived in this great Victorian. I don't know if anybody out there remembers. There was the TIFF building. Now the TIFF Theater was a parking lot. It was a huge parking lot. There was like a little diner, and but it was a huge parking lot across the street. If anybody knows the Indian Motorcycle Building, it's on the corner of, I don't know, John, maybe it's Peter and King. And next to it, there was a parking lot. Next to that, there was this huge old Victorian house, and there was a record store on the first floor called the Jazz and Blues Record Center. And me and my friends ended up renting the back of that building and sort of converting it into a warehouse living space. And we had like beer parties and stuff there.
Wow.
And we had our band there. And so there we were there, and I lived there for a couple of years, like 80. I worked at the Bamboo Club. I was a prep cook at the Bamboo Club.
Okay.
And got tired of that, phoned up a friend that I knew from the boarding school in Vermont, and they recommended this, they were going to the school called the New School for Social Research in Manhattan, and I applied and I got in, and I moved to New York.
You moved to New York. What band were you in with Corky Lang from Mountain?
The Corkster. Corky and I were in a band called Cork. Go figure.
Okay, well, Mississippi Queen, baby.
Yeah, my favorite song. It's Homer Simpson's favorite song. Corky and I are like brothers from another mother. We actually look like brothers. We're very good friends. I'm still very, very, very tight with him. I've written a lot of songs with him over the years, and we're in constant communication.
Constant contact.
He just turned like 75, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, happy birthday to Corky.
Happy birthday, Corky.
Okay, so now we've got you in New York as you're going to the school.
Uh-huh.
So does this lead to the
Absolutely.
the Spin Doctor's origin story?
It does, yeah. So let's see. Don't want to be too long-winded, but
you know what? This is the place to be long-winded.
Is it?
Those
Okay.
other, interview shows, they're like, brevity, man. You got 5 minutes. Let's wrap it up. I'm
Right.
like, slow the fuck down. I need every detail.
I mean, we've got craft beer with teeth, so there you go. Yeah, okay. So, so I go to the school, and it turns out that the new school it's a really cool school, and it was started in the 1920s, I think, and it's right downtown in the Village in Manhattan, which is exactly where my grandmother still lived at the time. So. It was super, super awesome for me because I could go visit with Edith, and she was a really cool lady. My grandmother was the chairman of Planned Parenthood New York for a long time, and her friend, Jane Jacobs.
There's a name.
Yeah, there's a Toronto name. They saved Washington Square Park in the late 50s. They actually stopped a guy named Robert Moses from busting through the park and making Fifth Avenue South because he wanted to do real estate like south of there. And it's a great story. It's a really great story. They got all these women together, and they had press conferences in like the ladies' house that had triplets with the diapers hanging on the thing. They got a petition that was on a rolling pin. They rolled it down the courthouse steps. There's all these stories about it, but they won. And Edith was awesome. She was just great. Her kids didn't like her, but I loved her. We got along like a house on fire. So anyway, I'm at the school. I started at the school. I didn't even bring a guitar to New York. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. Like I was going to be an anthropologist, So I go to this school and I start taking these cool classes, and it was amazing. It really opened up my head. I was there for about 5 minutes, and this kid named Tommy Dog, who had like black fingernail polish and all these piercings, figured out that I played the guitar. So before I knew it, I was like in a punk band, and I did that for a while and made a couple of like recordings with him. Came back to Toronto after this great year of school where I like learned so much. It was just, New York is the best city to learn stuff in. And I came back because I didn't have any money, and I cut the grass at UCC for a summer. I became like part of the groundskeeping crew, and I started a band here too. That we had a trio here called the Mofoistics, and the drummer from the Bourbon Tabernacle Choir, a good old friend of mine named John Bell, and we did a few gigs, and then I went back to New York with some bread, and I think I got a Pell Grant. I think Trump just took those away. But anyways,
what time is it? He might have taken some other things
he's
away.
taken a lot of shit away by now. Yeah, absolutely. And so I went back to go to my second year of school, and I think I brought a guitar back with me. I had a guitar by this point, and I was doing the enrollment. Now, the enrollment thing for that year. So it was like late August, just about September. And
we're in late 80s. Where are we here?
we are 85.
Okay.
85, I think, probably. Yeah, 85, I think. And so I go and I'm enrolling. And for those of you that don't know, the new school actually owns some other schools. They were affiliated with the Parsons School of Design, which is around the corner. So technically I went there too. So you could take classes there. So I had been taking photography. I took a photography class the year before, and I wanted to take another one. So I had to go to the Parsons building to enroll. I don't know where I was going, but I had a guitar with me, and I get on the elevator to go up to the 9th floor, or it was the 8th floor or the 9th floor, to register for photography. And the door opens. I get on, and this other cat gets on, this old guy, and the door closes, and I look at him, and he's got like a saxophone case on his shoulder, and like he's got brochures under his arm, and I can see the back cover, and there's this list of names. And I say to him, "Hey man, I have like records by almost everybody on your list." And he's like, "Oh yeah, you know, maybe I didn't have a guitar. Maybe I did." He goes, "You play whatever." I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I'm starting a school here. I'm starting a jazz program here this year. You know, you want to be in it?" And so I, instead of going to the 8th floor, I went to the 9th floor, and you know, I played like all the jazz stuff I knew, Corcovado maybe, and a blues. And his name was Arnie Lawrence, and he was just a brilliant jazz educator and just the coolest dude. And he looked at me and he said,
Educator is also a Simpsons term.
"Yeah, I think I got it from Dr. John."
Right. All right. And maybe I need to know my origin stories. Please continue.
I probably don't know mine either. But so I said, you know, I just went, I auditioned, and that's basically the story. And he says to me, Arnie had a lot of really good lines, like he would say to people, and he looked at me and he goes, "We can do something with you." And so from that moment on, I became part of that program. And for anybody that doesn't or hasn't, I really don't like school that much. I like odd schools. The classes have to be small. Something has to be weird. And one of the best things is we had a free class in the 8th grade in Deer Park. And that was amazing. 80 kids. You didn't do any normal subjects. You got to pick your own, you know. I just do well in that kind of an environment. And so, you know, this guy was just starting a school. So what does that mean? It means that he was the dean of Parsons had a big band. And there were all these guys that weren't professional musicians, but Arnie was the guy that they hired as a ringer. He was their soloist. So, and he did it because he knew the guy was the dean of Parsons. And then he sold this guy his curriculum, because there was no jazz school in Manhattan, but that's where all the clubs are. So he's like, "This is ridiculous. There's no school here, but all the clubs are here, and I know everybody." And he was in the Doc Severinsen band. He had played with, you know, all sorts of people. You know, all these guys. You know, New York's famous for musicians that you've never heard of that are better than any musician that you've ever heard. And he knew all those guys. And so he started the school, and that meant he had to pick the student body. So what do? You have to really make a show. So Arnie went out and he found all these amazing kids. I could list the names. Like there's guys that just, you know, they're fantastic musicians. Like, you know, they played with everybody. I know I could get into it, but you know, just trust me. And so
I trust you, man.
I can tell. And so I ended up at that school, and I ended up just meeting all these and you know, I was like a rock blues guitar player, and he needed, you know, we were like the Sweat Hogs because there was all these guys that could play like, you know, bebop and jazz and this and that, and he was really informed and very good at educating, and he needed the polarity of having a bunch of dummies and a bunch of smart kids. And I'll give you an example. Like the first exam, the first year, and we didn't even have this. The school they were lending us rooms,
right?
You know, like, you know, and bringing in instruments and like getting them from here and there. It's fantastic. So the first exam he rented a yellow school bus, and he took all of us up to Liberty, New York, which is in the Catskills where all the cats used to play. And we had this group called the Trucking Company that he made us form, you know, it's for, you know, it was a creative program as well, and so the trucking company was like these two brothers from New Jersey, me, a great drummer named Abe Fogel, and a guy named John Popper, and John is the harmonica player and singer for Blues Traveler.
Of course.
That's when I met John, and so we go up to play, and the cats that were playing in the other groups are these like, for example, a guy named Larry Goldings, who's he just won the best organ player on the public vote for the Downbeat magazine poll this year, as an example of a guy. And Brad Meldow is another guy that was at that school, another world-class piano player, and I could just go on and on. Once I start thinking about it, I'll just start rattling off names. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that we go to do this gig, and at the last minute, he switches the order on us. So we played last, and the other guys played first, and they were so angry, as I recall. But the thing is that as soon as we hit, everybody started dancing. And it was a real lesson. It was a really, really amazing lesson in music because, like, people think that jazz is this heavy cerebral thing that's inaccessible unless you're like really good at I don't know what. And the reality is that jazz is like, it's kind of advanced blues, and it's not really that highbrow in many, many ways. It's related. It's people's music, so it's like, jazz is the teacher, funk is the preacher. And so anyways, I ended up at that school. I ended up meeting John. I ended up meeting Chris Barron because John brought him in from Princeton when he was a friend of his. I ended up meeting Aaron Comas. He's the drummer for the Spin Doctors. And I put the Spin Doctors together because I was playing in this other band, and then John brought Blues Traveler to New York. At the time, I think he was about 18. Brendan, the drummer, was about 15. And Bobby and Chan were maybe, I don't know, 17. They were young guys. They ended up in Brooklyn living in a house, and everybody dropped out of Arnie school because we all started, doing music. And so John says to me one day, I mean, it was so cool. We used to go around the city. There was a blues jam we used to go to, and we just sort of like this. There was a club called Nightingale, which was like just this amazing kind of melting pot. It's, there's a lot of story here. I can't, but what I'm trying to say is that John turns to me one day and he goes, well, I'm bringing my band to the city, but I want this to be my second band. And I've always been a little bit, feisty. So I said, fuck that, man. I don't want to be in your second band. So I said to Chris, because I'd already met him, and he used to open for them as just an acoustic act. So I went to Chris and I said, dude, like, let's make a band, but just lose the acoustic guitar. You'll be a great front man. And then pretty much right after that, as soon as he agreed, then I heard Aaron playing drums from behind a closed door, and I knocked on the door, and he answered. And that was when I met him. It was at the beginning of a school year, I think. And I said, something like, do you want to be in a working band? Which he still tells that story. He thinks it's a funny thing. And he said, yeah. But my point was, like, you want to be in a real group. I don't want to be in a group where, like, we're all just like, session guys, and I want, and so that was the beginning of the Spin Doctors. And then,
who named the Spin Doctors?
Me. Yeah, I was at Edith, my grandma's house, for dinner at one point because she lived a couple blocks away. And she had this great rent control apartment in the village since the 40s, and
nice.
Yeah, and rentals. She rented it until it was over, and that was it. And it was Bush was running for re-election, so whatever year that was, probably 86, and. I used
so re-election means you're up for 92.
It was right. So it was the other one. It was the prior.
Then it was 88.
88. So it would have been
Reagan did 80 to 88, and then
to 88. So it would have been like kind of in 87 when he was, So it would have been 87. That's
right.
Late 87, and we had put the group together. And she says to me, I used to go over there and watch Jeopardy with her, and the news. And I was in the kitchen getting her something, and I hear she didn't have a voice. She smoked from like 8 years old until 98. And I just I hear
smoking's good for you.
It can be. Yeah. I hear like, Toots, get in here. And she used to call me Toots, and so I go in. She goes, you got to see this. And I looked, and it was right after the Points of Light speech, and
which Neil Young quotes in Yeah, he's got there's 1,000 points of lights for the
That's right.
homeless man. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Machine gun hand.
And she couldn't handle that shit. She hated that. And it's just like, what does this mean? And she said, look, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And I've never seen this before, but they've got this room full of people, and they're explaining what he said. They're called spin doctors.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? The next day I went into, I was talking to this guy that used to be a poetry teacher at the New School who grew up with Vernon Reed, actually, a guy named Sekou.
Who is an FOTM?
I know, I saw that. I saw that. I read the list, yeah.
Right, make sure you're doing your homework.
Yeah, Vernon's
Good.
awesome, you know. Actually, Aaron plays with Vernon sort of semi-regularly, and yeah, Vernon's great. And and Sekou goes, somehow it came. I said, you know, I told that story, and somehow it came up. We were talking, and somebody said that'd be a great name for a band, or however it happened. And I was like, yeah. And I went to Chris and I said, I got the name, man, Spin Doctors. And he goes, I hate it. Now I've named bands before, so I said to him, I said, okay, that's cool, dude. You got 2 weeks. Come up with a better one, and we'll change it. Well. That never happened.
That never happened.
So that's the birth of the Spin Doctors right there. That's what happened. And we just we wrote a lot of songs together, and everybody brought in what they already had, and the rest is kind of our history, which you can ask me about if you want to, but that's how it started.
Okay, that's how it begins. So now we have Spin Doctors in New York City.
Yeah.
You're the founder here. You got Chris doing the vocals and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you about one song in particular, so I'm hoping you'll give me some details. You can guess what song, I don't know, but we're going to hear it in the headphones here. Let's get a little taste of this.
Yeah. There it is.
You can talk over top of it. I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that there's no one listening who hasn't actually heard this song in the past couple of weeks. This song, it's still everywhere.
Yeah, it's omnipresent at your supermarket or in your Uber. Yeah, it's my special favorite song, actually, in the whole world. And so, this is Chris at his finest with the riff by me and the brilliant drum fill of the intro of Aaron Comas. And that's our big song.
That's your big song.
Mm-hmm.
So many questions, but maybe dive in a little deeper. Like you come up with a riff and you're like, hey, I got this thing, and you play it. Like how does this song form?
So a lot, you know, Chris is really quite brilliant. He's the best lyricist that I know, and he's just such an oddball, and I love him for it. And so he had like the basic song, but it was just kind of geeky and stupid, and so, you know, I just like rockified it, man. I made that chord progression is mine, and we put it together, and we played it too fast for a few years, and then slowed it down, thankfully, before the recording. And you know, as a funny, we had other songs too, and we were really like we had a lot of good songs, and we had a very good core audience in New York. But Two Princes, it was just this. When you heard it, you just kind of knew. I was like, you know what? If this ever really sees the light of day, it's gonna go crazy. You know what I mean?
This is you.
Yeah, it's all me on the guitar. That's a '59 Gibson Les Paul I rented off of Artie Smith, and a 410 Bassman, also from 1959. What a blast! Yeah, baby.
Yeah, that drum fill is great there too. Like, it all just came together here, man. This is just.
We sort of, the three of us have a really great pocket together. We fit, and we went through a few bass players, and Aaron was playing with this cat, Mark White, in a band called Spade, and we were having problems like solidifying our bass player thing. And one day, I lived with Aaron, actually. We lived on Elizabeth Street together, and Chris used to come and just hang. He lived at the Traveler in Brooklyn, and one day Aaron says, you got to come down and see this guy. He's kind of an oddball, but I think he might really be the guy. And as soon as I heard him play two notes, I was like, oh, this dude is amazing. And then we made a rehearsal, and we played about a half a song and just stopped, and it was like we found the fourth guy. And you know, it was just such a great band. Oh my God, what a killer band. We actually have a different bass player now. That's a whole other story.
Well, what is that story?
So Mark kind of right-winged out, man. He
Anti-vax.
not just that, anti-mask, anti-vax, anti-flying, got to drive everywhere, you know, a Trumper. He's a black man in a white supremacist, world. And I love him. Don't get me wrong. America's full of all sorts of, opposites, but Mark, he just warped out, man. And he just, and it was very fortunate for us because the band was going to end again. And, we were like, Mark just, it was so weird. He saw an advertisement on a picture of an advertisement on a New York City subway saying something about, you gotta get vaccinated or whatever it was. And he was driving to the gig because he refused to fly at this point. So he drove his Corvette everywhere, and he just tweaked, and he was like, I'm fucking out, And so we had a couple of gigs, and we were just about to cash it in, and except for Mark had one pre-approved bass player, this cat Jack Daly, who is the guy that you'll see in Lenny Kravitz videos from the 90s. He was the Lenny Kravitz bass player, and he's a terrific, amazing bass player. And I called Aaron, and I was like, he was like, what are we going to do? And we just sort of decided, I said, why don't you call Jack Daly? So Aaron called Jack, and he says, you want to play this gig? And Jack said, sure. And Jack played one gig actually the first gig was canceled, which was lucky because he had to learn all our stuff. And, but then the second gig came, and it was really very similar to our Birth with Mark. We sort of, the three of us, and weirdly, we had been writing this record that's coming out in April.
I'm going to play a cut from it soon. Yeah.
And so it was almost in the same. It was like the same bag as before. It's like we had all these songs on the phone, and we hadn't started working with Mark on them yet. And Jack has a recording studio in Asbury Park, and we ended up. And then the pandemic was kind of, going strong at this point. And we ended up that February just taking the money from the kitty and making a record with Jack. It took us 14 days. We did a song a day. And then, I mean, it's a joy to work with Aaron. Aaron is one of the best drummers I've ever worked with. He rarely uses a click track. He's just amazing. He's just got a fat pocket. He's just, and Jack is every much as the bass player Mark, but kind of a little bit opposed. He's more melodic, less funky, and it was just the exact same thing. It clicked. We made this what we think is a great record, and then we just started working, and then he never left. So it's been 3 years, and now he's the guy now.
Well, I pledged to you that soon I'm gonna play new Spin Doctors, and I want to get some more info on what's coming out, the new music. That's happening for sure. So I feel like this, it's Mark who was kicked out of the band?
No, he wasn't kicked out of the band. Mark left. He
quit the band.
Yeah, he quit, and for a while he was saying I think he made noise that we kicked him out. We never did. He left, and he said that
the spin I heard, pun intended, is that he was kicked out for being anti-vax. Yeah,
that's the story that he put forth. We've never really disputed that story much, but I'm going to dispute it right now. It's actually not what happened. What happened was, I think, to save face, he more or less said that that's what happened, but really what happened is that we wanted to keep working through the pandemic, and at the time you couldn't, you had to have a lot of times you had to be vaccinated. You had to wear a mask sometimes. If you were going to get on a plane, you did, and he wouldn't even fly actually at this point. So he left. He just left, and he had approved Jack, and Jack came in, and Mark didn't really ever dispute it, and we didn't talk for a while. Now we're talking again. We're in touch. And
he was ahead of the game. I know you mentioned he might be a Donald Trump supporter. Is that what I heard?
Oh yeah, he's a Trumper.
He's a Trumper because I feel like he was ahead of the game to not fly. I feel like under Trump, it's better not to get in an airplane.
Yeah, it seems that way today. That's for sure, right?
So he's ahead of. He knew what was coming as a Trumper.
Yeah, okay. America's a funny place. It's full of a lot of opposing views, but somehow everybody's supposed to be an American, and so it's an interesting ball of wax.
You, my friend, were on the cover of the Rolling Stone.
Yes, sir.
January 1993.
Yep.
So it's like everything's happening. You know what? I want to hear a bit more music from that album. So Pocket Full of Kryptonite.
Pocket Full of Kryptonite, yeah.
Big fucking album for you guys. Just a little more.
As
Because
they say in New Jersey, it was fucking huge.
it's huge.
It was huge. No H. There you go. Here's the other one. Oh, I got a good story for this one. So you hear those double stops on the guitar, that sort of Chuck Berry riff thing? That was a test take, because if you're in a trio, you can only play one guitar. So a lot of these solos I hadn't played, I didn't have them until we started making recordings. So we would do. I was the coffee guy at a studio called RPM on 12th Street in Manhattan, and when we had a chance we were making this record after the deal. We got the deal and so forth. We ended up doing the overdubs at RPM because it was a cool place, and I knew Bob Mason. And so anyhow, I walked in the one day, and we were doing this song, and we had the beds done, but I needed to put the other guitar part on, and I didn't have a great idea what I was going to do on Little Miss, and there was a Marshall in the corner, and I looked at it, and I was like, "Oh, that looks cool," and I'll plug it into that. And basically, I was just getting a sound on the Marshall amplifier. We were talking about Kurt Schefter, and I was kind of thinking, what would Kurt do?
Right.
And that's that intro there. That's what I was thinking. So
You want to hear it again? Here, let me.
play it
now that we
again.
got that story
Let's
here.
throw some credit to my friend,
Right. This is how it's.
the underappreciated Kurt Schefter. It's kind of sort of trying to give a little Kurt swagger.
Good.
I think I hit it.
We might have to give Kurt a co-writing credit. Be careful.
Well, you know what? Actually, he should have got a co-writing credit on some of that Atlanta Miles stuff. You should be careful what you say.
Oh, Atlanta Miles, fun fact, is actually Atlanta Biles.
Yeah.
Okay, you know these facts. I
Yeah.
can't tell you anything.
No,
okay?
you can. Just you can't
Not
tell me
that
that. You can't tell me that. Yeah.
Little Miss can't be wrong, man. So things are happening for you. You're on the cover of the Rolling Stone. You're playing Woodstock in '94.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, what's that like? I can only, this must be how Blair Packham felt when Last of the Red Hot Fools was taken off. What's going on here?
Well, so, that was a big year for us, 93. It was a fucking huge year.
Yeah.
92, 93 was incredible. And we were really big in England too. We played second last at Glastonbury that year, and there was 80,000 people there. We did a huge tour with Soul Asylum and was it the Gins or the Screaming Trees? I can't even remember. And
Maybe both.
Yeah, maybe both. And so we got on that Woodstock gig, and the thing was that at that time, the egos were kind of going. There was a lot of ego, and so it was, I actually
ego for a minute. I
ego.
thought the Eagles.
Not the Eagles.
Eagles. Hell freezes over.
No. It's like, so after that year, '94, I quit. I left the band for 7 years right after that. And
Yeah, I mean that's one of my obvious questions.
Yeah,
It's like you
yeah.
abruptly leave, and you were you were burnt out. What happened?
Chris and I just didn't get along. We didn't see eye to eye at that point, and I just thought his ego was going nuts, and I just couldn't handle it. And fortunately for me, Aaron is like a rock, and he never moved. He just stayed. Chris stayed. Then he lost his voice a couple of times. They had a couple of different formations. I mean, Ivan Neville was in the band for a minute, and eventually it was 2000. It was pretty much 7 years to the day, and there was no more hits after our big record. We had a couple of sort of semi hits with the second record, but. Really, it's the three of us, and it's just the way it is. And so, in 2000, no, not 2000, 2000. What year was it? It was 2001. Yeah, it was 2001. So in 2001, a club that we helped to make a huge club with the scene was this club called the Wetlands Preserve in Lower Manhattan, and really a lot of the re-hippies were there. The Dead wasn't super popular back then, but there was this kind of core Dead following around that area. And even though Nightingale was sort of a punked out club, it all fed into this other scene and the kids that were in Manhattan. And anyways, long story short, it was the beginning of the jam band as we know it now. And so Wetlands was huge, and it spawned a lot of things, and it was a great club, and they got squeezed out by condos. I have a personal theory that the singer-songwriter was actually born from gentrification the second time, because there's no clubs left that you can make any noise in. You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
Yeah, kind of. And so, anyways, they were closing, and so they put us back together. They phoned the management office and they said, "Is there any way that we can get the original 4 guys back together again?" And so the management office called me and them, and we all said the same thing. I was like, "Well, I'll do it if they'll do it," and they were like, "Well, we'll do it if he'll do it." And we had the same experience again. There was our monitor guy, God rest his soul, Sean Giblin, who passed away from brain cancer about 15 years ago. He was there doing the soundboard. We met at SIR or some other place in New York, and it was exactly the same thing that happened as the story I just told you. We played like about a half a song and stopped, and Giblin goes like, "Holy fuck," or something like that, and it was just like, and we were back together again. And I've been in the band now since 3 times as long as I was in the first place.
Yeah, since 2001.
Yeah, so we made 2 or 3 records then, but there's various stories. This one didn't come out because the label folded. The next one was a blues record, and and it was like, so really, it's not till this one. So it's
this
really,
one, which we're gonna get to,
yeah,
and then we'll find out exactly like the current status of Spin Doctors and what's going on here. But to be specific, though, because the way you quit's kind of interesting, because you literally walk off stage.
Oh
right?
yeah, I absolutely am like that. Yeah, I'm just
so like in the middle, you're in Berkeley, I guess, and
Berkeley at the
you're on
Greek
stage.
Theater.
Like what happened? You have a moment of like fuck it, I'm out.
Yeah.
And you just walked off. Like it was in the middle of the set.
No, it was the end. I mean, it was like Chris did this thing where he like, I was probably being a musical asshole at the time too. You always think you're right, but like you get older and you realize everybody's wrong. And so it's like, he did something. He passed by me and he put his hand across my face like in this weird way, and it just the whole thing just like fell apart in my head. And I was like, fuck this guy, fuck this shit. And backstage went down, and we just had this fight, and I was like, I'm out of here. I left. I went back to the hotel, and then I just didn't answer the door.
Wow.
They eventually left, and I called my old man, and I says, I quit the band. Oh my God. He was like, "You what?" I was like, "I quit the band." Now you're talking about a guy who's been in music his whole life. He's like, he was super proud of me too. And he was just like, "What the fuck are you talking about? You quit the band?" I said, "I quit. I'm out." And he was like, "Okay, listen, you got to get on a plane. And where's the next gig?" And I was like, it was at the Gorge which is an amazing venue. And and he's like, "You got to get on a plane. You got to go there. You got to offer to play because they'll sue you." And whether that was correct or not, I'm not really sure, because he said you might be violating a road contract or something like that. And as you've already pointed out, he was, he knew contracts.
Right.
So I followed my old man's advice, and my girlfriend and I went up to the Gorge, and they were sound checking with Kenny, who's an old friend of Aaron's. He played guitar.
Black Crowes.
No. What I Am, Edie Brickell.
Okay, yeah.
Aaron grew up with all those guys.
Okay.
So Kenny was playing guitar, and I was like, "No, it doesn't sound any good." I thought to myself, whatever. Then they saw me there, and there was this little moment. There was this like circle, and like, they came out, and I had sunglasses on. They were like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "I came to play." And they were like, "Yeah, you can't, play." And I was like, "Oh, fine, fuck you guys." And so I had offered. I figured I filled my old man's like requirement, and so then I fucked off for 7 years.
7 years. So in that 7-year period, though, you're back in Toronto?
No, I tried to move to San Francisco for a while. Okay. I did some sessioning, and I started another group, and stuff like that. I played on Natalie Merchant's record Jealousy, or Tiger Lily, and some other stuff. I played in a cool jazz band with Jack Bruce and Charles Neville and a bunch of other notable people. And I just, I worked on a couple of records on a record with Eddie Kramer at Electric Lady. I met those guys.
Wow.
So he did this record, The Symphonic Works of Jimi Hendrix, and I think 96 or something like that. So I was in there. This sort of thing was just happening to me because I was the guy that quit the Spin Doctors. I was living in New York. So all these things were just kind of coming my way. And I was just, I don't know what I was thinking. I'm really not that smart when I think about it because I could have done a lot better. But in any case, I was having a great time, and I was a little bit post-traumatic stress because it's weird quitting a band like that.
Well, you started the band.
I did. I started the band. So
you started the band, and this is like, a lot of bands get started, but very few bands have a hit, multiple hits, but a hit as big as Two Princes.
Yeah, I know, it's huge. It's like SNL and all that. Anyways, and I was like, it was just bizarre. So I was at the Electric Lady thing. Eddie called me up and he wanted me to play on 2 tracks on this record that he was doing with all sorts of notable musicians on it, and I'm like, sure. And so it was amazing because we did Burning the Midnight Lamp, and Noel Redding was the bass player, and we did In From the Storm, and Billy Cox was the bass player, and I enlisted my friend. One of the cool things that happened when I quit the Spin Doctors is that you might have heard of this fella, David Aberzies. He was the guy that got fired from Pearl Jam at the same time. We were on the same label. And so what did I do? The very first thing I did after offering to play was I phoned Dave. And I was like, yo, man, you don't know me, but we're label mates, and I just quit my band, and you just got fired. What's up? And he was like, come on over. So I went to Seattle, rented a LTD, and went to his house for about a month.
Is he the guy, what's the song about, got a gun, in fact, I got 2, that's okay, man, because I love God, glorified version
Glorified G?
Glorified G.
Yeah.
I feel like that song might be about Dave.
It may be, yeah. I wouldn't know, but I mean, he's.
Like, I feel like I've read that on like some Five Horizons.
It probably is. He had there was a lot of weirdness there. Like he really got
song actually. I
love Pearl Jam. I mean, and it's on Versus. Yeah, and he's the drummer on Versus.
Yeah. So I think that song is about him.
Yeah, it may well be.
And Pearl Jam, it's funny. That's a band that's 100% intact, excluding drummers, and
the drummers
now they're on Matt Cameron for a long time, but they went through a bunch of drummers.
Yeah,
Jack Irons.
That's right. Jack was cool too. He was, but Dave's my favorite. Dave is really the guy, the live guy. He's not on 10. I think that's is it Matt Chamberlain? I think it might be.
Yeah.
But another Dallas drummer actually. Great drummers from Dallas, and Dave is from Dallas.
Hey.
And so Dave and Aaron kind of know each other because they're both from Dallas. Anyways, Dave and I were fast friends, and I spent some time with him, and we both loved weed, and it was great. And he told me all sorts of stories. And
I'm shocked to find out Spin Doctors like weed. This is a mind blow to me.
We were on the cover of High Times.
I'm surprised you're not on the cover of High Times every fucking issue. Like when I think of these jam bands, weed-loving jam bands, I got Spin Doctors on the top of the list for sure.
But Chris and I used to be we were weed mates, me and Chris. I remember we'd get high before like these ridiculous gigs. I don't know how we did it. But.
Is it boring now that it's legal? Like what's part of it?
No, it's the voice of the people. Maybe come on, especially in Canada. I mean, shit. I have to remind myself. But when if I go up to Quebec with my girlfriend for in December, usually once a year, and it's my special favorite pleasure is just like getting a stinky bag of weed, put in my top pocket, and like walking through security. I love it. It's just like this is great. Finally,
you can't do anything to me, man. Amazing.
Exactly.
Little detour. Okay, so
hang on. Let me.
Please.
Yeah, I got to finish the Aberzies story.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Because I'm at Electric Lady. Or Eddie called me about this gig, and he was telling me, well, I've got the bass players like this, and I said, who's the drummer? And he didn't know at that point, and I said, I got the guy. So I called Dave, and Dave came and did it. So it was really great. It was like Dave, me, and Billy Cox, and then Dave, me, and Noel on this other song. And listen, for a guitar player, it's like psychic debt. I'm like recording with Eddie Kramer in Electric Lady, doing Hendrix songs, and I mean, how cool is that? And so Noel walks in. And who walks in with Noel? Corky Lang.
Yeah.
That's when I met Corky. And we were like bull terriers together. Like he's like, you do that too, you do that too, you do that too. And they were running around in circles, and then we found out we were both like Canadian somehow, right? So he's from Montreal, and I grew up in Toronto. So that was it. Like as soon as and then we made the band with Noel. Then we had a trio, me and him and Noel Cork, and we made like one recording or two recordings, and we went to Ireland and we stayed at Noel's house for a couple of weeks. And I mean, there's just stories and stories and stories. Great relationship I've had with him. So that's where I was going with that. And that's how I made friends with, that's how I made friends with Dave too. And when I brought him on that gig, it sort of just solidified our, our brotherhood.
I love verses. Just gonna throw it out into
Me
the
too.
verse. Love
Me
it.
too.
And I have a couple of younger kids, and I always break into elderly woman behind the counter in a small town, just because it's one of those like so you can sing it to your kid.
That's cool, man.
All right, that's the longest title in the Pearl Jam catalog. Okay, so couple of quick observations just before I forget to spit them into the mic, and then I'm going to give you a couple of gifts, and then I'm going to play a little bit of your solo thing, and then I want to talk about what's going on with the new stuff here.
Sure.
So that's in that order. And if I go off on tangents, that's okay too.
Yeah.
But the observations are,
good.
one is you got great pipes. So now I've been listening for about an hour in these headphones. How do I get pipes like that?
You just work at it. It's like anything else. You just have to, I didn't grow up singing. I grew up with stringed instruments all around me. None of my family sing.
But you grew up smoking.
Yeah, so I've got
That helps,
that.
right?
Yeah.
A note to self: start smoking.
Start smoking. Well, and stop before you're 70, because otherwise you sound like my grandmother. She didn't have a voice. You got to be careful.
But she lived to 98.
She did. It's
Took a note
true.
over here. That's fucking incredible.
Youngest of 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
The good old days before birth control pills.
Yeah, so you have to have 12, so at least 5 survive.
Right.
Literally. I mean,
It's a numbers game.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, geez. Okay. And I hear they might get back to those days under Trump.
Yeah, it could easily happen. I mean, I don't know what the hell's going on.
I think the new rule, now that's a country now where they'll take care of the wealthy, and then the 99% are just fend for yourself, like, fuck you.
It may well be. It's so weird. I can't even really speculate. I mean, I just don't even know what to say. I voted.
Have you voted in New York?
I did, which is kind of, you don't really need
yeah.
to, because it's a blue city, but I mean, it's extremely disappointing to me personally, and I know there's a lot of people that don't agree with that, but fuck it, that's how I feel. I just think it's, I really believe in, like I told you, my grandmother was the chairman of Planned Parenthood.
Right.
I mean, how the fuck can I not?
Right.
It's just right there.
Yeah.
I cannot freaking condone that shit.
Well, what gets me is we're on like day 9 or something. I don't know. Like, right? And this is what's it going to look like in 6 months, 2 years? Like, this is a dictatorship. It is.
It's an authoritarian regime, and it's like hopefully he's going to overplay his hand. That's the only thing I keep thinking.
Who's going to stop him? Is a Republican Party going to stand up and say, hey, this is a violation of our Constitution?
They're not doing it.
I don't know where the checks and balances are on him. He's got the Supreme Court. He's got the House. He's got
so fucked up.
Senate?
You know what? Ginsburg should have stepped down. She should have gone. She should have stepped down, and then at least there'd be another judge.
Right, Obama would have appointed. Right.
Hey, could we take 5 so I can take a leak?
Go take 5. Actually,
Okay.
I'll do my sponsor mentions. Well,
All right.
yeah. So the washroom's there. Don't hit your head though. Remember, I've warned you here.
I'll be right back.
Then you come back for the wrap up here.
Sure.
I am going to give. By the way, my last point was, and I'll revisit this when he gets back from taking a leak here. But born to be a rock star. I'm listening to this story in the headphones now, and it seems to me like Eric Schenkman was born to be a rock star. There was no other calling for this guy. He can tell me he was going to be an anthropologist or whatever this bullshit is, but he was going to be a rock star. And maybe he wasn't going to have a top 40 U.S. Billboard Hot 100 hit, but he was going to be a fucking rock star. And we'll talk later about how he's playing every Wednesday night at the Grossman's Tavern. So you can hear him on a Wednesday night at Grossman's Tavern. We'll talk about all that. But I'm going to give him a lasagna from Palma Pasta and fresh craft beer from Great Lakes Brewery. So thank you to Palma Pasta. Thank you to GLB. Thank you to Ridley Funeral Home. I got a measuring tape for Eric right here. Latest, newest, freshest sponsor is a gentleman named Nick Iones from Fusion Corp Developments, and he's got a great podcast called Building Toronto Skyline. He also has a new book called Battle of the Skyscrapers, and soon I'm going to chat with him about all of the above. And basically, I've come to know this guy, and this guy just wants to help fuel the real talk on Toronto Mike. So this is a sweetheart, everybody. And of course, there's recyclemyelectronics.ca. If anyone out there has old electronics, old cables, don't throw it in the garbage. because those chemicals end up in our landfill. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca. Put in your postal code. Watch your head, Mr. Schenkman. And you can find out where to drop it off to be properly recycled. So thank you, recyclemyelectronics.ca. You might have missed it, Eric, but I just gave you a large lasagna from Palma Pasta.
I love it.
Do you enjoy lasagna, my friend?
I do. Absolutely.
Okay, it's in my freezer. Don't leave with it. That's an empty box. We'll fill it up. And you mentioned you're going to see
Stan.
So
Yeah.
who's Stan?
Stan Mizek plays bass on Wednesdays with me at Grossman's. He's a terrific bass player. He's played with everybody that you've. I think he's played with Kim Mitchell. I think he used to play. He's played with Healy. He played with Sass Jordan. I mean, he's just a who's who of what's what.
I bike Park Lawn Cemetery. Speaking of Ridley Funeral Home, I do a bike ride through Park Lawn Cemetery. I did it last week, and Jeff Healy's buried there.
Yeah, that's right. The little park. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he lived near there, and there's a park. Yeah, there's a park named for Jeff Healy on the other side of
That's right.
Queensway.
I have been to that park. Let me just say, Jeff was just such a fantastic, amazing Canadian guitar player. One of the very best. I would put Jeff Healy and I'd put him right at the top of the list. Actually, I got to say, Jeff rocked.
I was a big fan.
We're doing. I think there's a gig on March 6th. I'm not really hardly involved in it. I'm going to go sit in. I think Stan's playing bass, but there's a. I think it's like I don't know. It's a Healy. Let me see if I can find it on my phone.
You find that, because I actually want to play a little song that's not Spin Doctors, but an Eric Schenkman jam. And I guess the point was that Stan the Man, as I now call him, is getting this Great Lakes beer you got here, and he's going to be very excited because he loves his Great Lakes.
Exactly.
Okay,
I promised it to him. He lives around the corner from here.
Okay, well, he knows this is the home of GLB, South Etobicoke. So here's a song, not Spin Doctors.
Oh, yeah.
John at the Mardi Gras.
That's it.
Woo! I was up on the street. I thought I saw him.
You know, you sound a bit like
He's a very good friend.
David Lee Roth.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, David Lee Roth with a little pitch.
I'm gonna raise a roof and party with everyone one time. Anyhow. Oh.
Yeah, it's my little Zydeco thing, man. Took me about 20 years to write that song.
Who shot John?
Yeah, that's an old expression. A friend of mine used to say that. Don't give me that who shot John. Yeah.
I've never heard that expression. I just thought maybe, are we talking John Lennon? I'm trying to
I know,
figure
it sounds like that, and that's usually the question you got to field. But actually, it's just like, I think it means bullshit. I think it's like, you're going to give me the whole who shot John, It's like, yeah.
I'm going to add it to my lexicon.
Yeah, do it. I like that.
Start dropping it in. Who shot John? I like it.
Yeah.
So how long you been playing Grossman's Tavern every Wednesday?
7 years, which is crazy.
Well, you know who's related to Grossman?
Eric Alper.
Eric fucking Alper.
Yeah, that's right. I know him, yeah. Yeah, he's like the nephew, I think, or something.
Grandson, maybe?
Yeah, maybe grandson. He told me once, and I've forgotten.
Well, he told me. He's been down here, and we talked about how like his grandfather was Grossman or something like that.
And, and they sold the place to the Louis in '75. And that's a good story, too. I mean, God, Grossman's is such a cool place. It reminds me of the club I mentioned before, Nightingale Bar. And I don't know how the hell I got that gig, but I ended up with it. And then now, it's funny. So I'm there most Wednesdays,
Confirmed, by the way, it's Eric Alper's grandfather.
It is, yeah.
That started Grossman. He's Grossman from Grossman's Tavern, yeah. Okay, so Eric Alper and you are buddies, and he can help you with like PR and shit like that, right?
Yeah, he did some of that for me for a minute. He's like the PR guy around town, and I'm just looking for the Healy's thing. Hang on, I can find it right here.
I love that album with See the Light and Confidence Man. Was it called See the Light? Maybe it was called See the Light.
Maybe.
But just loved it. Loved it.
This was a really fun album to make. I co-produced this record with my buddy Sean Kellerman, who's another terrific Ontario, the best blues guitar player I know in Ontario.
From Lucky Peterson.
Yes, Lucky's guy, and then Lucky died, unfortunately. Sean was
That's
Lucky's
not
MD.
too lucky.
Not too lucky. Yeah, then he became Unlucky Peterson.
Shout out
Started
to Ridley
lucky.
Funeral Home. My goodness gracious.
Everybody gets unlucky sooner or later, bro.
I'm gonna turn. Well, it happens to the best of us.
It does, you know.
When is it gonna happen to Donald J. Trump? Any idea?
I don't know, man. I think he might be like. There's a song on that record about him too. I think he might. I don't know. I keep thinking like, you know, he's. It's too lucky. It doesn't happen. I don't know. He's got some kind of a thing going on. Here, I found it.
The deal with the devil?
Yeah, I didn't really want to say
Robert
that out
Johnson?
loud, but yeah, I think he
made a
maybe
deal?
even is the devil.
Well, he's almost red. He's orange.
Yeah, he is. That's right. I don't know, but I've heard tell if you want to get to heaven, don't waste your time in hell. That's the lyric that just went by. So
Dig
don't
it.
have some fun, people.
Any more solo material in your future here?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of actually mixing a bunch of stuff from this band, and I'm gonna put it out soon. It'll be on Apple Tunes soon, before the summer. Anyways, it's gonna be called Wednesdays, and it's gonna by the Action Sound Band. That's
Wednesdays, because that's when you play Grossman's Tavern.
and that's
Yeah, I'm pretty swift, right?
That's another band that I named, the Action Sound Band. That's pretty cool, and it's named after a verb and a noun. You got to go simple.
Yeah, well, listen, you're the master of that now. Let's talk about Spin Doctors in 2025, okay?
Please.
Maybe,
let's.
yeah, let me play this jam right here.
No, do it. Yeah, there we go. Now you're talking. Gorilla.
I can tell the Bible from a bottle of rye. I can tell the moat from the mud in your eye. A hawk from a hailstalk, bamboo from a willow. Gorilla, gorilla. I know tragedy from Thriller. I know emptiness from Filler. I know bullshit when I smell a rat. I know it's not vanilla. Marauding like a tiller, munching leaves like a caterpillar. You want King Kong, but you got Godzilla. I might be a monkey, but you might be a killer. I might be human, but you're still a gorilla. You're still a gorilla. You're still a gorilla.
Pretty cool. Yes.
Digging it, man.
It's our 2.0, you know? I'm so glad it's such a tough song, which is great. We need that, because people think, you know, it's hard to have a song like Two Princes because it got overplayed like a motherfucker.
I was going to ask, though, like, so, again, we're going to get back to the new stuff, but Pocket Full of Kryptonite, big album with a couple of big hits on it, including Two Princes, which is still being played on every rock station in the world every day. Like, are you trying to write another Two Princes with follow-up albums?
No, that's the kiss of death. I mean, you know, I think for a while, like, we all tried to do that because, you know,
your accountants told you to.
Yeah, it's more like the record company. They kind of look at you and they go, well, you know, you're a failure unless you do that again. And it's weird because when you try, especially us, when we tried to do that, it was sort of impossible, or it just sounds too. We sound like we're trying too hard in one way or another. And what's cool about this record, it's called Face Full of Cake. It's coming out on April 11th. And what's cool about it is that it's not trying hard at all. We made it in 13 days. And it's really very similar to Kryptonite in the sense that, you know, rock and roll needs to be, you know, kind of, it doesn't need to try too hard. I think people like listening to shit that's, you know, falling out of your head.
People like listening. You're preaching to the choir, except radio in 2025 doesn't seem interested in playing new rock, does it?
No. Well, radio in 2025 is like it's a non-descriptive, like I don't even know what that means, is what I'm trying to say. So we don't know what it means either. But what we do know is that when we play a show, and we've been playing these songs for about, like, because we made this record about a year and a half, 2 years ago, right? It's just been sitting there, and because we had to do a bunch of, we had this terrible deal with Sony for 20 years, and we've been trying to get out of it, and we finally got out of it because Capitol's putting out this record, And there's a lot of acts from the '90s that fell into this category where, you're in a contract, and if you haven't fulfilled the contract, there's language that you have to satisfy to fulfill the contract. And of course, business people love to, put handcuffs on you if they can. And so the problem is the industry changed. So if you're looking at a contract from the '90s that says you need to make if you want to get out of our contract, you need to make another record with another major label. Well, that's fine to say in 1990 or 1995. But the fact is there's like 2 major labels now, and one of them's Sony. Interesting fact, when we signed that deal, we signed with CBS, and it became Sony after that. And CBS was actually an old, cool record label. And so, so Capitol's putting out this record. So we finally were able to, we held on to this record and tried to, maneuver our way into putting it out on some other label. And we finally were able to do it.
I have a note from Mark Weisblot, who has been on this program many times. And Mark Weisblot says he learned about your new album, and he included it in a pop culture roundup feature called Judar. Okay, this is Mark's word. Judar. It's in a quarterly magazine published by the Canadian Jewish News.
I've heard of that.
Which is coming out in April.
Yeah.
So he points out here, fun fact, I suppose, like the Ramones, all original Spin Doctor members are Jewish.
That's correct, except for Mark, who's...
but he's gone now.
Yes, that's correct. And Jack is a nice... Irish Italian guy who's been playing with Jews for years. He's in Lenny Kravitz's band, and I think Craig's Jewish too, the guitar player, and so is George. Actually, he's from Winnipeg, the keyboard player. It's true. Yeah.
And that gets you in this feature called Judar.
Judar, that's right. You got some people got Gaydar, we got Judar.
Yeah, no one's. Yeah. They don't post any of my shit in Judar.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing out here.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I come from a family that was. It's funny being Jewish is a weird thing for me because I come from, like my grandpa was, grew up. My great grandmother, his mother, my mother's father's mother was a seamstress in Long Island, and Marvin, my grandfather, he wrote an essay and got into Harvard Law School. And then went to Harvard and became a tax lawyer. But the thing is that that whatever the name was, it got reassigned when we came through Ellis Island. We became Lyons. Lyons sounds like it sounds like you're from England.
Yeah, British. Yeah.
My grandfather became a name partner in the firm that he was in, which he would never ever have done had he been whatever the other name was, and. So we call that Christmas tree Jews, like we're like, there's a Christmas tree and there's a Christmas party. But if you go into the dining room, there's like this menorah behind the table. I didn't even know what that was. I don't have any Jewish like history in my family. Like it was just kind of like buried. And I didn't know anything about it and you can understand why. I mean, I just found out recently that in the 1600s, they pretty much exterminated all of the Ashkenazi Jews in Eastern Europe and left, there was 12 women left. So we're all related. So in a weird, crazy fucking world, me and Aaron and Chris, we're basically cousins. And so, I said we all have the same pocket. Well, there you go.
It's a pocket full of kryptonite, man.
Pocket full of kryptonite, sewed out of 2 onion sacks, it's crazy. It's a crazy world, man.
Well, just yesterday, my guest on this program was a Toronto City Councillor named Brad Bradford.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a client and friend named Dana Levinson who's been very vocal about Mayor Chow because she tells me anti-Semitism is being tolerated in this city, and her kids, her family, and herself, they're actually feeling unsafe in their Toronto neighborhood. Mm. And then, of course, I have a counselor on, so we talked about is Toronto doing enough to make our Jewish citizens feel safe? And this came up. Have you noticed this uptick in anti-Semitism?
No, I'm pretty much immune to I have a tough skin, and I don't I don't know what it is. I think it's the story I just told you. It's like my family, and my dad's family is funny too, because half of his family is Jewish. Like my son recently did the DNA thing, and his mother's English from England, and my kid's name is Wiley, and he called me up one day and he goes, "Oh, I did the DNA thing." And I said, "Oh yeah, that's cool. I've never done that. It's like I don't want to get my fortune read either." And he goes, "That Eastern European, that's all you, right?" I was like, "Yeah,
That's all you.
that's all me.
That's
yeah,
all you, man.
You know,
You know what? My nerve. I always think, oh, if I ever did one of those DNA things, they'll find out like my brother's a serial killer or something like that.
Yeah,
You know,
right. So you don't want to do
like,
it.
oh, you know,
yeah,
somebody
yeah.
really close to you is a serial killer, and now
Yeah.
we have your DNA in our database. I'm like,
Which
you
is,
can't have
I'm
that.
like that too. I'm like paranoid like that. But my it's funny though because Peter's mother, my other grandmother, is actually they're English, Dutch, and they've been in the United States since like freaking 1600 or whatever it was. They came over very early,
Right.
so I have this weird split in the family where part of my family is from like South Carolina and Virginia, and and it's just odd. So even going down and visiting then in the old days, it was sort of like my Jewishness was like it's becoming more pronounced as I get older. Like I just didn't really ever. I guess I don't know what it is. I was insulated from like professing it at a young age, and I didn't know why. Maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe it is. But now that I'm getting older, I'm like, I identify, man. I'm proud of it.
No, you should be proud of
I'm
it.
proud of who I am. I'm proud of where I come from, and I don't like the anti-Semitism. I don't like any of that stuff. But I kind of believe that I sort of have always believed that I can take care of myself, and if somebody wants to get in my face and really push my buttons like on that stuff, I will talk back, and I'll say whatever comes right out of my mouth. Like I quit the band that time. It's just like
You just walked off stage in Berkeley.
said fuck this
That's
shit.
very punk rock.
It's my favorite colloquialism. It goes like this: "Fuck that shit, man."
Fuck that shit. Who killed John? Okay, Eric, this was amazing, man. How was this for you? I love this chat.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm having a great time. Yeah, it's great, and you've gone over so much stuff. It's incredible. You've got you have a knack, my friend.
My Sharona, the knack. Listen,
That's a weird lyric.
oh, pretty one.
Yeah, do a dive into that lyric. That's funny. We just realized the other day that he just runs the major scale right down. Yeah. We were talking because Chris. It's funny. Like he did that. It's the same thing as that guitar solo I told you about. It's like he never did that rap until we recorded the song, and like a bunch of stuff just happened when we recorded the song, and then of course it gets on the radio. Like the guitar solo, for example. It's like. And then you get proud of it, and so you play it, because they want to hear it. And let me add this: the thing I was going to say about Gorilla and the new record is the way that. So we've been playing those songs for a couple of years because we were trying to get this deal together so that we could get out of bed with Sony, which we finally did. Thank fucking God. And you're playing. We vary our set list. We will always play probably two Princes last and Little Miss somewhere in the middle, and there's a couple other songs. But we are very adventurous, and we play a lot of our catalog within, and we mix it up a lot. So Gorilla, as soon as it's very similar to Two Princes because we'll put it before Two Princes, and you can see the reaction, and it works. And so I was just going to say, when you have when you got a tiger by the tail, you know it, and people they react. So
in the history of your time with the Spin Doctors, have you ever performed a concert and not played Two Princes?
yes, but it's not a good
Was there
idea.
a riot afterwards?
It's just not a great idea.
It's a terrible idea.
Yeah. Well, we never played it on TV. We did many TV performances, and we always refused to play Two Princes on it.
But why did you refuse to play the biggest hit of your career?
It has to do with the punk rock ethic, I think.
Yeah.
It's just like somewhere deep down, we grew up here in the city. I mean, I did anyways, and we were always kind of punk rock in my soul, Like I just, there's something about when they say you go, nah. And it's not always a good idea. So you do live and learn, but that's my explanation.
Okay, because that's an asshole move. Okay, if I bought a ticket, I'm there to see Spin Doctors, and I don't hear Two Princes, I'm gonna fuck shit up.
Yeah, well, we're never gonna do that again because what happens is after a while you realize that the thing about music like that's in a zeitgeist is that it's not really yours anymore. It really isn't. It's like people expect to hear it because they relate to some part of their life with it. Here's a good name drop. I used to work with a singer called Phoebe Snow, and Phoebe hired me initially because one of our songs, it wasn't Two Princes, but it was a different one. I can't remember. Maybe it was Jimmy Olsen Blues or something. But it got her out of a rough patch in her life. And, these kind of stories, they come up over and over again. And you realize these songs aren't really yours. Once they're like in people's heads, they're in their lives. It's poetic. It reminds them of the sights and the smells and the experiences of some other thing. And so, if you're just going to think, well, we're not going to play that song because I'm not going to play that song again. It's not really a very fucking smart move. You really want to give the people what they want, but you also you got to give the band what it wants too. The band's a bit of an entity. You know what I mean? Like we're doing a bunch of dates this summer with Gin Blossoms and Blues Traveler. We're doing a triple bill
back with Popper
across the country, across America, and it's sort of like that's a thing. It's like it what's the word I'm looking for? It wakes people's they remember some aspect of their life back then, and it's nostalgic, and maybe it's a happier time for them. Maybe it's a heavy memory, or maybe it just makes you feel good. Like I feel like that when I hear
I mean, I say that about music all the time on the show. It's a time machine, man.
It's a time machine.
Nothing takes you back
exactly
like music.
Like you hear some Elton John song, like, and you're just like, your heart melts, and you're just like, and you're 10.
All right, now that I've warmed you up, how lucrative was Two Princes for your your bank account?
Oh, dude, I told you already. It's my favorite song. It's my special favorite song. It's all of our special favorite songs.
Is it the gift that keeps on giving? Like, is it still being licensed for?
Yeah.
And you guys own it? Like, if Netflix show wants to use it, so we all know it's 1993 or whatever, because the easiest way to tell people you're in the early 90s is throw on Two Princes.
That's what I'm talking about. Exactly. Yeah, it's like not ours anymore. Yeah, but yes, of course they do. They have to. Yeah, we didn't sign away 100% of our publishing to anybody ever.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
I root for your success. And the new album comes out in April?
April 11th, I think. Yeah, we're doing a record release at the Brooklyn Bowl, and then we're going to be playing it around America. Anyways, we'll get up here too, but it's hard.
Let me know when you get up here.
I will.
Blair Packham and I will go together.
You'll be my guest.
Are you kidding me?
Absolutely.
You're
That'll
a welcome
great.
addition to the TMU, the Toronto Mike Universe.
And thanks for pointing out my Canadianness, by the way, because it's true. It's like, I'm sort of unsung up here, and people just don't know.
Well, now the world knows. Founding member of the Spin Doctors is one of ours, and he's at Grossman's Tavern every Wednesday. Thanks for doing this, buddy.
Yeah, definitely. Call first in case I'm on tour with the Spin Doctors.
And don't call Eric Alper. Call the tavern directly.
Yeah. Ask for Christine or Tony. Don't call Eric.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,621st show.
My lucky number.
Get a tattoo, man. 621. Let's commemorate. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. I'm on Blue Sky at torontomike.com there. And much love, of course, to all who made this possible. That is Great Lakes Brewery. Nick the Stick is going to get his GLB. Palma Pasta. Don't leave without your lasagna, Eric.
Wouldn't think of it.
RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Building Toronto Skyline. I actually got a call during this episode from Nick Aines. We're recording tomorrow morning, Building Toronto Skyline. And, of course, Ridley Funeral Home. Just yesterday, Brad Jones was here, and we recorded a fresh episode of Life's Undertaking, available wherever you get your podcasts. See you all tomorrow when Bob Wagner makes his Toronto Mike debut.
And don't forget, Ontario Place was really cool. I saw Muddy Waters there.
The Forum.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of spoons, yeah, I saw Chalk Circle there in 85.
There you go.
Finally got Chris Tate in the basement just so I could talk about that.
Another cool dude.
I have a woman in the schedule coming up. Allie Weinstein, I think is her name, but she made a movie, like a love letter movie to Ontario Place, so we can have a little nostalgia. And I bike by it all the time, man. It looks like a bomb went off.
No, it's such a tragedy. It was an amazing place, but you try to tell the kids that today, and they won't believe you.